Okay, we ready to go? You guys can hear me? First thing I need to do is a public service announcement at 6:30 down in where the keynote room is. That's when the gambling and drinking and general debauchery starts. So just a reminder. I'd like to thank all of you coming here. This is a full house. This is last session of the day. We're excited to have all of you. Thank you. I can see some people who look a little jet lagged right now, but I think we'll get through it. My name is Jim Clark. I'm Senior Director of Product Management at MarkLogic. I've been here a little over 2.5 years. A few of the product areas that I'm responsible for, Bitemporal, which was presented a few times today. Along with Bitemporal, I have Hadoop, and then, of course, the business intelligence tools. So I want to do a little business intelligence before we get started. Can I see hands of people who currently have Hadoop in their environments today? Okay, not a ton. Oh, Wayne, thank you. So maybe 4 or 5 hands. And then how about BI tools? I would assume most everyone has BI tools in their environment, yeah. Okay, the reason I asked about Hadoop is you're going to see some Hadoop in this presentation today. Hadoop is interesting. We hear a lot about Hadoop, but when we actually dig a little bit deeper and find out if customers are using it and how they're using it in terms of use cases, we don't get very far. So I'm always very curious to find out how people have deployed it or how they are thinking about deploying it. Just as an FYI, from a Hadoop standpoint, we have a connector into MarkLogic. We support Horton, we support Cloudera, and we just recently started supporting MapR. So you're welcome to talk to me about that afterwards. Again, you're going to see a little bit of Hadoop in this presentation. We talked the last few days in the keynotes about breaking down data silos, organizing your data, being able to manage it within MarkLogic. The next obvious thing is, how do you get it out? What are the different things, the different avenues you can use? And I'm going to let Jasmine talk about that for the next 30 or 35 minutes. Thank you.
All right. So apparently I am between you and alcohol. So I am going to make this fast. Or at least painless, as I did try my fair share of stand-up comedy. I take all my public speaking engagement as a practice. So if I'm funny, my name is Jasmine. If not, I guess I'll just say my name's Ashley. So when you fill out the survey, just know that. All right, so a little bit about myself. I work in the channel organization at Tableau, supporting awesome partners like MarkLogic, also our resellers, our integration partners. So I spend a lot of time in the field with customers looking at their data. Now, I love it, which is why after 4 years, I'm still here, still doing this, and every day live on the very first Tableau t-shirt I've got, data, rockstar, every day. That's my life. I live and breathe data. So today, what I want to do with you guys is, well, talk a little bit about how you can help your organization. You can be the data rock star of your organization. Not only get beautiful data in, but get beautiful data out. And so just before we start, quick show of hands. How many of you have never seen Tableau before? Okay, we've got a few hands. How many of you would call yourself a data rock star and you lived in Tableau all the time? Anybody? No? Okay. Well, this is good then. This is going to be fun because nobody can stand up and challenge me to do some calc bake-off. That's good. So we'll see a demo of Tableau at the very end. So how many of you have used it before? Trial, say 3 to 6 months? More than that? Pretty new, 1 to 2 months, just getting started. So we have a wide range of experience. So in today's session, we are going to start by taking a look at some trend we have observed at Tableau. And also talk about challenges. Every picture we paint is easily to say it's rosy and beautiful, but let's be real. Having today's complexity in data, there are challenges. So how can we solve them? And how can we use Tableau as a platform to solve the big data problems? and also talk a little bit about data strategy, how we at Tableau see some customers being successful implementing data strategy, and share some tips with you guys. And we will finish up this session with a demo of Tableau. And let's get started. So we are in an age where we're swimming in data. 5 exabytes of data was created since the beginning of time until 2003. But today, the same amount of data is created every 2 days. And in different estimates, there's different number, but nonetheless, they are all big, scary numbers with more that's actually more common than my fingers on my one hand. So big data. We talk about big data nonstop. Just so we're all on the same page, there are 3 V's we always talk about big data. We talk about volume, how much data, velocity, how fast the data is coming in and out the system and how fast is data changing, and also variety. Different kinds of data that's being stored and being captured. But the most important part of big data is actually the 4th V, value. Just because we have this data doesn't mean we're deriving value from it. How often you just have this idea, I capture this data, but what do we do about it? It's just there. It's available, it's there, but how do we derive value? How do we, drive a culture of analytics within your company, making better, smarter, faster decisions with all of the data you're capturing? So we are going to focus on driving value. Some of the trend, I love Candy too. It's a lovely slide, I love the slide. Some of the trends we have observed at Tableau is, first of all, we start seeing data become less and less uniform. Just like a basket of candy, data now comes in all sizes and shapes and different kinds of data. We're also seeing data becoming more and more interconnected. Relationships. Think about analyzing text, analyzing sentiment, and think about how cool it is that there's a recommendation engine that's going to tell you what you might like based on restaurants you've visited. The third trend we see at Tableau is unstructured data is growing fast. Every time I talk to a customer, I log in Salesforce. Every time I boot up Tableau server, I start to see, I generate logs. The sensors I'm putting in my house, all of the automatic lights, and that's controlled by my phone. I'm not wearing my smartwatch, but that's more data. So we are seeing all of this data being generated, and it's growing at a very, very fast pace. So with all of these modern data needs, what do we have? It asks for new technology. New technology like MarkLogic. Not only we can work with unstructured data, structured data, we're talking about connector to Hadoop. We're talking about just all sorts of different things you can do inside of one platform. This is what modern data needs calling for. We start to think about how can we store more at a much cheaper cost. Think about the volume. How can we accommodate all of the different kinds of data, and how can we do this at scale? So I talk about the exciting part. Let's talk about challenges. I mainly want to address 2 challenges today. Number 1 is, well, let's be honest. We are, as humans, are not very patient. How much can we tolerate a spinning circle? 2 seconds, according to this study from University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We can tolerate a wait time of 2 seconds. So how do we make a data platform useful for end users become a very important question. The second challenge we are going to discuss is the change in data model. We start out very often almost everybody start out in the relational world. SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, maybe Excel. Rows and columns, very organized data. But we are seeing more and more JSON and XML documents being introduced as data type. So, well, they're awesome. I think they're really cool stuff. Why? Well, we can do very complex data models within the documents, and it makes development very easy. Our documents and also our language, everything's just meshed together. Life's great, but it's difficult to analyze with a relational tool. And also, generally speaking, when we're processing documents, it is going to be slower than what we're used to in many cases. So let's dive in a little bit more into this piece of data. So this data was actually written about my colleague Jim and I. And I first of all want to say not all information presented in here is accurate. I can tell you I am not 23. In fact, most people think I'm 16, but that's a different story. Age is a regular joke people make about me, but that's okay. And so, first of all, mixed data type. Let's talk about age. I am marked as 23 in this piece of document in integer, whereas my colleague Jim, being 31, is in string. Information is not uniform across data documents here, because we can store whatever the heck we want to put in it. In this case, there is an extra piece of information in Jim's document that doesn't exist in mine. Nested array. How do we handle multiple objects within the same attribute? So cars. Jim have, in the family of 4, got 2 vehicles. Believe one of them is a van to accommodate all the carpools. Whereas for me, I am a pet parent of 2. A smaller vehicle is much better. I have 1. So how do we handle the situation? And one last example is key as data. So in this case, we have a piece of document describing cities and the population. What's the issue here? We don't actually have a column header describing which part of the data is city, which part is population. So this table becomes very wide. Is it the best to analyze average population in these 4 cities? Do we really want to query across in the same row, or is it better in a column? How do we handle these situations? So we talk about all of these challenges. I'm going to shift gear a little bit and get into Tableau. Let's talk a little bit about why Tableau. First of all, we offer very broad access to big data platforms. Today, we offer over 40 named connections in Tableau, MarkLogic being one of them. Almost all of the production database you have worked with, likely we offer a connector to it directly. Also offer ODBC connection for additional connection needs, and data API to connect to even broader range of data. And visual analytics without coding. Think about this. When do you want to spend time wrangling your product, or do you want to actually think about the question you're asking your data? Our goal is to make the tool disappear. If you're working in Tableau, you're not thinking about working in Tableau, you're thinking about the next question you're asking your data, then we have done our job. We also offer a lot of different ways of connecting to data, hybrid data models, in-memory versus live connection, which we'll address in a little bit, and our continuous investment into query performance is also a big piece of this. So let's talk about a few aspects here. So connecting to various data platforms. We make the process simple. Regardless what data platform you're connecting to, your experience is the same. Input credential, see schemas, see tables, see databases, select the schema you like to connect to. Everything, all of the data is ready for you to start analyze. Doesn't matter what it is, we're good to go. The second piece of this that's extremely important for us. So we go back to the concept of big data, volume, just volume alone, right? We can't pull all of the billions of rows of data into memory. That's impossible. What's Tableau doing? Well, first of all, we don't need to pull row-level detail into our query cache. Every time we start drag and drop, we are only bringing back the amount of data necessary to render a particular mark, or marks in this case. So when I dragged out one field, it started out as one mark. I start to do some slicing and dicing, 4 rows of data, and then it becomes 16 rows of data. So I start out by looking at sales, and sales each region, and then broken down by year. So at this point, Tableau is really only bringing a small subset of information back for us to consume. Here comes the part I really like. We talked about why Tableau. We talked a little bit about some challenges. Well, let's talk about how to put the puzzle pieces together. Something at Tableau we recommend is, we often see customers do, is a cold, warm, hot data strategy. And before I even go there, just want to do, this is a very serene picture. There is actually important message here. I want to review just one concept with all of you, is the data lake. So what is it? I love all the terms that's been created to describe all the things we got. So data lake, the idea is all of the data is brought in as is. So from all of the sources. So all the varieties, all of the different kinds of data, we're just all going to bring into this one platform, into the clusters as is. Okay, they'll be stored. And second part is we're going to process the data within the data lake. Instead of going through ETL into warehouse, everything stays inside. And the third attribute of a data lake is we are going to structure the data later or on the fly. So everything just going to come in, it's going to be stored, and it's going to sit there for now. So that usually refers to our cold data, which we often see as Hadoop. So some of you in the room are currently using Hadoop in your data strategy. Maybe you're thinking about it. Maybe that is the next thing you want to think about. So usually what we see customers do is using Hadoop as their cold storage. Layer on with prepared data, relational database. And then on top of that, we see aggregated data for fast performance. So let's dive into each one of these segments of data. Cold data. So every piece of this data strategy is targeting a little bit different audience. Not everybody is going to have access to all of this data. Personally speaking, I don't think it's necessary. With the massive amount of data in the cold in your data lake, who will be using this? Well, part of it is collection storage. The other part is for, say, data scientists to go in to mine and explore and figure out some bigger trend and some analysis on a bigger picture. This is your cold, and we see most often Hadoop Hive, and this is not regular reporting data. When we move to warm, so everything, we now start to see operational reports. You maybe have a monthly, weekly report need to be sent out, maybe for regulatory reasons. This is the part of your data where everybody needs to see it on a regular basis. There are certain business rules that's applied across the board. And this is when you see the very, very familiar names of SQL Server, Oracle, etc. And then we move to the exciting part of the hot piece of data strategy, which is analytical databases. So you also see this thing called TDE. That stands for Tableau Data Extract. So this is our in-memory engine. So Tableau offers two ways to connect to all of your data, whether it's a live connection, meaning we query data every time you interact and query being sent back to database directly, or pulled in-memory. We offer a architecture-aware in-memory engine, which means we write the file to disk, and it's a columnar store and highly compressed data file, and so when necessary, we'll pull that portion of the column in memory for analysis. That's our TDE. So hot is the exciting part. Why? Because this is the part where your business users, maybe people who don't have a whole lot of technical skills, but they have the business needs, they have the question. This is where they really go in and start to have some fun. And this part is architect for performance. Because remember, 2 seconds is how long we are willing to wait for that spinning circle without going insane. I actually have a coloring book on my desk. It's really zen if sometimes you have to wait for a long query at a customer, via VPN onto customer's remote desktop. It's really helpful for me. But the idea here is make it fast and make it work, drag and drop experience very great. So I mentioned TDE. When do we want to use them? I have customers, they're like, oh, you have this in-memory engine. Can I just use it for everything? No, don't do that. I don't recommend it. There are times for live connection. If you have already made an investment into a super awesome database, a warehouse, use it. All the time and money you have spent on your baby, use it. I want you to leverage your investment. And also, if you have really, truly massive amount of data, use your live connection. And also, TDE's refresh goes up to 15-minute increment. So if you need real-time analysis, live data always up to date, that's when you use a live connection. But on the other hand, if you have a legacy data source that's slow, all right, let's take it in memory. If we want to do offline, and also we want to reduce load on the data cluster, all great time to leverage Tableau Data Extract. Now, here's what I think is the most important part, is quick win, get to the result. I very often start working with a customer, And I hear them telling me, okay, we're not ready for Tableau yet because our data warehousing is not done. We have this project, we're backlogged. But your decision doesn't wait for you. You have to leverage your data. So while you are doing your warehousing, use Tableau to help you validate your data. I have many customers who they can find outliers very fast by doing drag and drop actions, seeing what's available, and see those outliers and fix the problem while they're implementing a warehouse. And get started on your data. And this is why TD is great. Let's talk about some best practices. I promise I'll go through this really fast so we can go jump in Tableau and start talking the really, really fun things. So, how do we make everything faster? Number one, for Hadoop specifically, leverage one of the interactive query engine we've seen on the market. And then there are some general techniques to improve your data environment's performance. You'd be very surprised how often I go talk to a customer, they give me a table that's not partitioned. I don't understand that. I personally don't. Let's do there are some very basic techniques we can get started, and right away we see query performance to speed up. For our file format, our file store specifically, what kind of format matters a lot. Some are better for read, some are better for write. Think about that, make that decision. What are you trying to do? Initial SQL and custom SQL. So in Tableau, we support the ability for you to leverage initial SQL and custom SQL before connecting to a data source. So maybe limiting the amount of data you're trying to connect to, or configure certain parameters, all the important things to do. Well, single denormalized table generally works much better on smaller data set. Not so much when we got bigger volume. I would say, well, if we go above 500 megs of data, we have a warehouse for that. Let's start there. And also monitor long queries. This in Tableau is especially important. Why? Because a long query can go wrong in many places. It could be very inefficient in the database. It could be a calculation we've written in Tableau that's just causing a problem. It could be we picked the wrong data type. So let's get down to those specific queries and get going. So we actually provide you quite a few tools that will allow you to pop the hood of Tableau to see what queries we're sending and take a look at what's taking so long. Is it actually rendering views? Or is it something more like a custom SQL query that was not optimized? I'm just going to quickly go through things to avoid. I told you things to do. There are things to avoid. Data blending is a really awesome Tableau capability that allows you to bring two disparate data sources into the same view. And in this case, the secondary data source is always aggregated to what's the visible dimension in the view. In this case, you don't want your large Hadoop table or very large data set as your secondary source. That means we have to run a lot of extra aggregation on the fly. Unnecessary joins. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory for those of you who's been working with data for a while. Overhead, let's avoid those. And large number of schemas, columns. The idea of the data warehouse is going to end all warehouse. That Tableau dashboard is going to end all dashboards. Well, let's do more targeted, designed subsets to make things go better. All right, you have waited long enough. Let's get in Tableau. I am going to first open up Tableau Desktop. So we offer two main products at Tableau. Tableau Desktop, which you're looking at right here, is our main authoring platform. And then we offer Tableau Server, which is the enterprise sharing and collaboration platform. So Desktop is really where you will connect to data, explore, do all the cool things. And what kind of cool things do people do? I can actually show you something really quickly before we even get there. How many of you had a March Madness bracket this year? Don't lie. We all won a few bucks, right? Everybody? At least a beer, maybe? So this is my pool of March Madness brackets this year. Everybody was showing how many possible points they can have. My friend Keisha's very creative sports ball. She actually won the whole, she was the least sports-oriented person, so hence named the sports ball. And you can see we actually run a little script, scrape data out of the ESPN, also connected to our data from our pool of all the brackets, and showed how everybody's doing over time.
Is this pulled from hot or from kind of system?
Pardon?
Is the data pulled from hot or you divide into three pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hot, cold, and warm.
This one we pulled into a data extract because we just scraped the web and pulled it into a data extract. In that case, well, I will classify it as hot because it's for analytics. It's for the drag and drop experience. So I actually have a set of data here already connected. So I'm going to take you through how I would start working with data in Tableau. I'm a huge sports fan. I love baseball. So I actually have a set of baseball data here. All of the performance over time. So one of the questions I actually have over time is, how are the players doing? Are we overall hitting more home runs? Well, let's find out. So I can see HR, there's my home run. I can just go ahead and drag this data out and break this down by year. Looks like overall, over time, we're definitely seeing more home runs. Well, I'm actually very interested in recent history because, well, I would like to find out in the past 20 years. We've gone through quite a few performance enhanced drug scandals. We've gone, let's see, past 20 years, how have we been doing? Just go ahead and put this onto filter. Oh, apparently ends in 2002. So let me just go to, say, 1980. Looks like it's still going on over time, going up. Let's just make sure I am really, really ready for this to see a trend. Let's take a look. The p-value is not great, so this was not fitted very well as a trend. I can fix that later. The idea of working in Tableau is really every time we start to ask questions, you see your data, you start dragging and dropping and start trying to answer those questions. So now I am a hopeless Seattle Mariners fan. For those of you who are familiar with my team, it's a little sad over time. So I am also going to break this down by league. I'm going to put this onto color. Actually, I find the trend line really, really distracting, so I'm going to remove that. So I can start to see over time what's happening. Looks like National League is actually overtaking American League in terms of how many home runs they've been hitting. Wow, those Giants. Wow. And I can keep on going and ask more questions like, how about my favorite player? Well, let's go ahead and just, oh dear, running that VM. See, my Windows VM is running, it kills my computer. I should go shut that thing down.
What's the data source here? MarkLogic database?
Yeah, so what happened was I have no faith in hotel Wi-Fi. I actually took an extract of a set off MarkLogic. So a connection experience to MarkLogic or any database is really the same. You click on the name, input your username and password, you're there. So at the end of the day, your user experience in the interface itself is the same. It's really, you don't need to know where data lives. Well, let me ask some more questions. So how about my favorite players? I would like to find out more about my favorite players and how they're hitting over time. So once again, I am going to just double click on home run and also bring out year. And this time, I'm going to go ahead and show player as a filter. Let's see, pre-2002. Let's just go with, give me a name. You read my mind. Do we have Barry? We have Barry. Well, 2011 was a good year. So you can see that as we start asking more questions, we start to do more with your data. So what if I have all these teams? What if I would like to visualize these teams on a map? Let me take a look. How are teams named? Oh, I see. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I would like to see all of my teams on a map, but I don't actually have city or any geographic information in here. So what if I just go ahead and transform this? Let's do a quick split. Let's see what we got here. Ooh, looks like city figured out. So I am going to go ahead and just rename this to city and also make it a geographic field. I'm going to double click on it. And I am now seeing almost all of them, cities, on the map. So which team hits the most home runs? Let me go ahead and put that onto size. Chicago. How about, I see some Chicago pride right here. What if I also want to find out, how about RBI? That's a good, important metric. Let me put that on color. Man, Chicago, just all around great. I guess history is a real thing there. It's aggregated data, right? So you can see the fun thing about Tableau is I'm just asking questions. I am a sports fan. I want to know more. And I actually, in fact, built a Tableau dashboard with all of the ballparks. It's a hitter's park or pitcher's park into a dashboard. I actually pulled it up on my phone while sitting at ballparks. You know, have a noble goal of visit all 30. I'm at 11. So I am a little nerdy, and I am really okay to admit that. So this is a really quick demo. I didn't even get into a lot of other cool things Tableau can do. If you're interested in learning more about Tableau, of course, we offer a 14-day trial to full functional to both our product. But best part, check out Tableau Public. You want to see cool vizzes? This is your place to go. Oh, that's. You can see what people are doing, visit their building, all the authors we have, and check out the gallery, what people are working on. Great place for inspiration. Now, I have a few minutes here. I would like to open up question and answer. Ask me anything.
Let me, if I can just jump in real quick. I just want to kind of bookend. So just to remind people at the beginning, we talked about Tableau as a partner. We connect with them via ODBC driver, and then they have a new web data connector, relatively new, that we work with quite closely. I think another thing to point out during Joe Pasqua's keynote this morning, one of the big things for MarkLogic 9 is additional investment in improved SQL. That's part of that is to address the need for business intelligence out there. We recognize that pretty much every customer who's running MarkLogic certainly has a relational system in their environment. Also SQL resources, they've invested a lot of time and money in. Those folks know how to use SQL. We want to give every possible avenue to get data out of MarkLogic as possible. So just to kind of create some context there. Sorry, Jeff.
Of course.
Actually, my question was related to that, whether to use the ODBC driver for MarkLogic or to use the web data connector. Which one do you recommend, and is there any particular reason for that?
I'm going to give you the product management answer. It depends. And in all seriousness, it depends on the use case. Sorry, I'll come over to the middle. I'd love to talk to you afterwards. There's a few people in the audience here who are working with folks in the field right now where we need to understand a little bit more about what you're trying to do. There's variables in that. Some of it has to do with the resources on the customer side and how knowledgeable they are. Other things have to do with configuration. So I wish I could give you a binary answer. I think directionally, we'd like to see more and more people moving towards the web data connector. We think it takes advantage of more of the richness that MarkLogic can provide, geospatial, all the other types of objects that we store in our database. So I'm sorry I couldn't be more specific, but it does depend.
So what kind of underneath document structure that Tableau support right now? Say if you have a nested JSON document, how or the data type kind of inconsistent, how do we support that?
So how do we, I think the question was if MarkLogic has JSON on our side, and then we connect to Tableau, what sort of transformation happens through?
Do we need what kind of document structure? Does it impose any special document structure?
Tableau? No, I don't believe it.
We
It
don't
does.
care.
Yeah, yeah.
You got data, we'll work with it.
Highly nested document.
Yeah, I think that's where we run into the performance issues, which is why we want to talk to people and understand their use cases, particularly people who are on MarkLogic 6, MarkLogic 7, MarkLogic 8, MarkLogic 9. We've re-architected it underneath, so there's much less framing required. Yeah.
Could we embed Tableau in our app, or would we
Yes.
have to?
Absolutely. So here's, okay, I'm gonna start with the first thing. I love, it's almost like you're my plant. So out of box, Tableau offers, with every dashboard, we offer a HTML code as well as a link for embedding. So iframe embedding with the link and all of that. We also offer JavaScript API for additional, more customized experience with embedding. Yeah. I used to describe it as it's almost like MySpace, for those of you who remember Pimp MySpace thing. You just drop a piece of code in there, it works.
Just a follow-up question on the web data connector. Can you explain a little bit more in detail what exactly that is and how it works?
Bill, do you want to help out here with the web data connector? Do you mind? You played around with it a little
So I can talk a little bit from a Tableau's perspective, how we see that, or you want to?
I want to hear about the MarkLogic.
Okay.
Sideline. So, well, with the web data connector, you basically will write a XQuery in a REST extension, or you can just use an SQY file or a JavaScript file, and you do a query, and then you take your output and make it a very flat JSON or XML document, which is then in turn ingested by Tableau. And you can do anything that you can do in an XQuery or in a REST extension.
Can you do like a time lapse kind of thing with the bitemporal data?
We've actually demoed that in the past with Tableau.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we do support bitemporal through Tableau.
So Tableau connecting to MarkLogic, do you require that ODBC driver or can it directly connect?
We have the ODBC connection and then the web data connector that we're just, yeah. I think most people use ODBC, and the reason why is that they've had their relational systems there with an ODBC connection. They either deprecate the relational systems or they have MarkLogic as additive. They say, here, we'll just take the ODBC and point it over. So that's what we see, at least that's what I'm seeing most of. Any other questions? Well, thank you for spending your afternoon in here. And what is it, 6:30? Is that right? 6:30 downstairs, so you got some time. Thanks, everyone.
All right.